These are called pneumograph tubes.
Okay.
Okay, these are going to measure involuntary movements in your chest cavity during the test, okay? So what I need you to do is put your hands together like you're diving in a swimming pool. Put your wrist on top of your head. On top of your head.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Have you ever had someone complain about something that you knew was his or her fault? Have you ever had someone blame you for something they did? This video is a study in how Chris Watts evades responsibility and shifts blame. First, I'll have a look at Chris's many complaints about the polygraph, and then I'll have a look at the polygraph itself. Make sure you watch until the end, because things are about to get rather embarrassing for Chris. Don't forget to click the like button, and if you're not yet subscribed, there's still time. Click the subscribe button and the notification bell for all updates. Liking and subscribing make it possible for me to make more videos for you. What do you think about Chris's claims? Leave a comment below to let us know. In prison, Chris made a phone call to his private investigator. His girlfriend at the time, Anna, told Chris to tell about the evidence that supposedly wasn't true. In other words, she's feeding right into the blame shifting that comes so naturally to Chris. Blame shifting, when consistent and misplaced, is a prominent narcissistic trait.
So, Chris, what were you saying before we got cut off about when he asked, I can't remember what it was, but you were talking about the evidence and your confession that wasn't true.
And of course, Chris doesn't miss the opportunity to talk about his struggles. The interesting thing is that he talks like this as if people empathize or should empathize with him, which speaks to his complete lack of self-awareness, another narcissistic trait.
I just know that I've never experienced anything like this before. Like from the tragedy that happened, from the law enforcement to the interrogation, the jail, the prison, all this was new. All this was new, and I knew the shock and the trauma was there in my mind. I didn't know how to process things.
This is the beginning of Chris's excuse as to why things didn't turn out so great for him. Speaking about his trauma, which unfortunately has become a buzzword that people who aren't actually traumatized will use to garner sympathy, at the expense of people who are actually traumatized.
Every question that they asked me, I was just agreeing with them and just going along with what they said, because I was like, well, I guess we had to tell them something. And even when they came here to prison and interrogated me, they were in their street clothes acting like they didn't, they were just talking to me, when in retrospect they were actually interrogating me again. All that is like null and void.
Chris claims he was just going along to every question they asked him. A hyperbole like this is easily falsifiable. It's not the kind of language that a subject should use when trying to sound reliable. Notice how Chris frames this to make it sound like he was doing the agents a favor.
You had to tell them something.
This is a willful distortion of the truth. Next, he again shifts blame, making the way the agents were dressed sound like a problem. And again, from his point of view, the self-focus is obvious. The most noteworthy thing is that he didn't realize that he was being quote-unquote interrogated in the prison interview. Apparently, he thought it was just a regular conversation. Chris isn't an all-round unintelligent person, so once again, this speaks to not just his lack of self-awareness, but also his lack of ability to pick up on social cues. I mean, who laughs like this when someone like Chris tells a funny story?
I guess I was one of her type. And you weren't her type? I wasn't her type. Okay. Like, she told me, like, when she first, because we had met. She told you that? Yeah. You're not
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, it was like, I should have known the doorman, was in a suit. And I was just like, this isn't good. And like, when she,
at the theater?
It was a fancy theater, right?
It was in Charlotte. It was called the Epicenter. And yeah, it's when she first saw me, she was like, I should probably just turn and talk to the bartender a little more. Like, no, I'm not here to meet.
The agents were highly skilled in making Chris tell on himself time and time again, and they knew how to do it. Feed into his self-focus and make him tell stories about himself. At the same time, it made the agents seem jovial and believable. But now, apparently, Chris has a big problem with it. You can't make this stuff up.
All that is like null and void, but still, they're going to try to use all this stuff against me. But I know that from that interrogation to the first one, they're all psychological intimidation of someone that, had never been in that situation before, and they just use that to their advantage.
Chris initiates this passage with the adverb still. This adverb implies that he's provided sufficient evidence in the preceding passage. He hasn't, of course, but his inference lets us know that he thinks he has. We should note the simplification all this stuff, which is a misleading dismissal of the actual evidence that the agents have from their conversations with Chris, including his confession. He refers to himself as someone, making his specific situation sound like it has general application and relevance to others. Chris calls it psychological intimidation, even though he went through exactly what any other criminal goes through. But of course, when it happens to him, he has to make it sound like he's suffering an injustice. His internal need for blame shifting doesn't allow any other possibilities. It sounds more like he's annoyed with the fact that he wasn't able to decode the agent's intentions. But of course, he can't admit that, because that would mean that he wasn't the smartest guy in the room, that they outsmarted him. Next, Chris starts whining big time, and it sure isn't pretty.
So strange, but the thing I know, like where you're talking about playing a game, is when the FBI agent and the FBI agent, like when the FBI first, the woman, when she questioned me for hours, and then after those hours of interrogation, she puts me on a polygraph. And then I'm exhausted at this point. And then after that, I'm sitting in there alone, and I hear them outside the door. The FBI agent comes up to, "Oh, how did you do?" And she said, "Oh, he did pretty good, but I think we get some more out of him." And they come in with this game face saying, "Okay, you lied." I'm thinking to myself, wait, I thought she just sounded pretty good. And I didn't question about it, I just believe what she said and they said I made it. But I know for a fact she said, he did pretty good, but I think we get some more out of him. I'm just like, I'll only think about this stuff way after it happened.
All right, Chris.
Wow.
Even after all his deceptive answers and detailed confession, Chris expects us to believe that this can all be excused with him being exhausted as he claims he was. Again, he puts himself first, how he supposedly felt. And he makes this polygraph sound almost uncalled for. Also, the reason why he supposedly felt exhausted is because he was lying so much. There's nothing exhausting about being asked a bunch of questions if you know you're telling the truth. So he gives himself away when he says that, and he doesn't even notice it. But he doesn't stop there. He has other entitled complaints to make. It's worth noting that the conversation he claims to have overheard about doing good can mean at least two things. That pretty good means that he scored high on the unreliability scale, or that he did pretty good, but not good, since pretty modifies good. Chris, however, immediately takes the words pretty good as praise, as if Tammy was praising him. He doesn't acknowledge the possibilities I listed, likely because they would imply that he wasn't doing great, and we can't have that. Furthermore, it's very likely that he didn't overhear anything, that he's lying. Even if Tammy did say this, it's inconsequential. Chris told lies, and ultimately he confessed. He's grasping at straws because he doesn't feel remorse. In the prison interview, he even expressed hope that people would eventually stop judging him, which again speaks to his massive sense of entitlement.
So I just hope that, hopefully one day people can stop judging everybody.
Likewise, he wrote to his mother that he's still a dad, still a son no matter what, and also a servant of God, that God has shown him peace, love, and forgiveness. He writes with such entitlement, expecting that the people he's hurt would actually want to be associated with him if they had a say in the matter. This is particularly true for the title Dad. Also, he invokes the idea of forgiveness, thus implicitly expressing what he expects from people, forgiveness. Overall, being able to write like this after all he's done points to emotional immaturity and a critical lack of empathy and ability to hold himself accountable. He also mentioned one church service, which allegedly and very conveniently made an impact on him.
There was one church service, the only one I've been able to go to in here, and it said you're not defined by one moment in your life. And I think that's like, people are defining me by one moment in my life. They don't know like what happened before or what can happen later.
Notice how Chris places the burden of performance on other people, because by inference, Chris expects people to not define him by one moment in his life. One moment is an extreme euphemism, downplaying his carefully planned decisions. In conclusion, we've identified prominent narcissistic traits: emotional immaturity, inflated sense of self-worth and self-importance, lack of empathy and remorse, constant blame shifting, and, related to this, willful attempts to distort the truth and put the burden of performance on everyone else, as he talks about forgiveness and judging. If anyone tells you stop judging, ask them, are you judging me for judging? Stop judging is a self-defeating statement, as the statement itself is a judgment. We all make hundreds of judgments each day: when we'll leave the house, eat dinner, what we'll watch on television, and so on. Judging isn't bad in itself, it's needed to survive. Narcissistic people will often guilt trip you into thinking that you're judgmental. They'll use popular buzzwords with negative connotations because ad hominems are their way of manipulating people into compliance. Now that Chris brought up the injustice of his polygraph, I thought it would be interesting to see how the polygraph actually went down, because it didn't appear to be as exhausting or unfair as Chris claims it was. First of all, Tammy arranged a 6-minute pause before the polygraph.
I'm going to have you take a bathroom break, because we've been in here quite a while. I need one as well. Let me find out which bathroom you're actually supposed to use. Hopefully one of them will come in here and help us figure out which bathroom. And then we're going to come back in here, and then again I'm going to tell you how and why the polygraph works, and we're just going to get kind of into the testing, if that's cool with you, okay? All right, so let me see if someone can direct you to the bathroom real quick. What up? Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Why don't you, I'll just take you out to the lobby, and then I'll just have you sit right there real quick, and then I'll come grab you.
So you have this here?
Oh, you can take it with you, whatever. Throw it in your pockets. Wow.
Chris is remarkably and thus unreliably polite for a suspect. Also, his is incongruent with the feelings of sadness we would expect him to feel at this point in time with his family missing. Again, he's unable to see how he comes across. He thinks he's fooling Tammy, but he's only fooling himself. Secondly, Chris hasn't exactly shied away from talking. On the contrary, he's enjoyed giving unrelated and unnecessary details as a way of trying to deflect, but also simply because he enjoys the attention. What's interesting is that he doesn't look beyond this superficial attention. It's as if he's completely clueless about Tammy's motives. If anything, Chris has exhausted himself with his excessive speaking. This is one more reason why his blame shifting makes no sense.
Or my go-to.
During the pregnancy?
Yep.
What kind of soda did you like?
Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew? See?
That's what I like.
Everyone at work makes fun of me for drinking it.
No, like my favorite was like the Baja Blast. Mountain Dew.
Oh, see, I didn't like that. Because don't they still have that at
Taco Bell?
Taco Bell?
That's where it was.
Let's see how the polygraph specifically took place. Tammy makes sure to emphasize and repeat a word like lie as an intimidation tactic, to see how Chris responds to it, and to let him know that he can't defeat the polygraph. She also mentions likely scenarios about what's happened. Her tactics are working because Chris is remarkably compliant for a suspect, and his voice cracks, indicating internal stress.
Let's go over the questions that are going to be on the test. Is that cool with you?
Yeah.
Just so you know the words to all the questions and there's no surprises and that kind of stuff, okay? And then we'll...
Am I allowed to like breathe like during this?
Yeah, I'll explain all of that to you. It's, you're obviously still a person and you still have functions that have to go on for you to be alive, so... But, you know, that you would have been the direct cause of their disappearance, okay? So that makes sense to you? Okay. And then obviously, lying about the last name you saw, that would be because maybe you helped someone or you did it yourself. So you're going to be taking what's called a directed lie polygraph. So what that means is there are going to be questions on the test where I want you to lie. Because I want to see what your body looks like when you tell a lie. So when I ask you this question on the test, before 2018, have you ever wanted to hurt someone to get even with them? You're going to say,
No.
because you're telling a
Lie.
awesome. Well, I'm sure you would agree from a very young age, your father taught you, that it's wrong to lie, cheat, or steal. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And that there's consequences when you lie, cheat, or steal. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
And I felt like I felt, I don't know if this was, the heartbeat thing, that's the only thing that I thought it was measured off of.
Next, Chris continues to be hesitant and very easy for Tammy to control. If Chris had wanted to speak up about injustices, there would have been plenty of opportunities for him to do so. And he's had plenty of time to process things, unlike what he claims in the phone call. The only reason he feels like he didn't have time to process things is because he was lying. Lying for hours at a time is extremely stressful for the brain, since the brain constantly has to make things up and disregard experiential memory. This is an unnatural state for the brain to be in, no matter if a person is good at lying or not. Knowing that justice was served in the end, it's kind of hilarious and much deserved to see Tammy order Chris around, while Chris desperately tries to keep up with her instructions, to the point of apologizing to her.
So I'm going to explain to you the components as I'm putting them on, because I think it makes the most sense, but I do need to kind of move your chair a little bit. And I'm going to actually have you, can we set these down on the floor like this for you? Is that cool? I'm going to move your water just a little bit. Just because I'm going to put your arm up here in just a minute.
Okay.
And you can have a seat back
Okay.
there. So the first thing that we're going to put on, Chris, is, these are called pneumograph tubes.
Okay.
The blue one's going to go kind of down by your belly. The silver one goes up a little higher underneath your armpits, okay? These are going to measure involuntary movements in your chest cavity during the test, okay? So what I need you to do is put your hands together like you're diving in a swimming pool. Put your wrist on top of your head. On top of your head.
Sorry.
That's okay. And then just lean forward slightly so your back's off the back of the chair. Perfect. Now let's try not to laugh you in the face. And if at any time like this feels too tight or whatever, just let me know, okay? And I can adjust it for you. Pretty skinny though, so I want to make sure it's not going to fall down too far. And put your hands up. I'm going to do the silver one. Does it feel like it's too tight, or does it feel okay?
Okay.
Okay. Sounds like the right time. So the next thing we use, you can put your hands down, I'm sorry.
Chris can't complain about the questions either. They were clear and unambiguous. In short, Chris has no case. It's game over.
Are you now in the state of Colorado?
Yes.
Before 2018, did you ever lose your temper with someone you cared about?
No.
Have you ever met anyone like Chris? Let us know in the comments. Take care.